Far beyond Earth, deep in the center of the galaxy, hundreds of warships floated around a massive space station. The station was larger than many cities. Bright lights covered its metal surface. Thousands of officers moved through its halls. Inside the highest command room, silence filled the air. A giant holographic image floated above a round table. The image showed the face of a child. She looked small. She looked harmless. But every person in the room stared at her with fear. An old admiral slowly stood from his chair. His hands trembled slightly. "We have searched for her for 20 years, he said. His voice echoed through the room. No bounty hunter has succeeded. No military fleet has found her. No government has been able to track her location. The image rotated slowly. The face of the young girl remained in front of them. A second officer stepped forward. "The reward now exceeds 1 trillion credits, he said. Several people exchanged nervous looks. That amount of money could buy entire planets, yet nobody had managed to claim it. The admiral looked at the image again. "Find her," he said quietly. "Before it is too late." The room became silent once more. Everyone understood the meaning behind those words. Then the hologram disappeared. Millions of stars filled the display. Somewhere among them was the child they feared most, and nobody knew where she was hiding. At least nobody in the galaxy knew, because at that very moment, the child sat inside a classroom on Earth. The school stood in a small town surrounded by green hills. Students filled the hallways. Teachers prepared for another normal day. Nobody suspected that one of the most important secrets in the galaxy was hidden inside the building. In room 12, Daniel Carter organized papers on his desk. Daniel was a history teacher. He was 37 years old. His students liked him because he treated everyone fairly. He believed every student deserved patience and kindness. As the morning bell rang, students entered the classroom. Some laughed with friends, some looked half asleep. Others rushed to find their seats. Daniel greeted them with a smile. Then the classroom door opened one final time. A small girl stepped inside. The room suddenly became quiet. Daniel looked up. The girl appeared to be around 12 years old. Her dark hair reached her shoulders. Her pale blue eyes stayed fixed on the floor. She carried a small backpack tightly against her chest. She looked nervous, very nervous. Daniel immediately noticed it. The school principal entered behind her. "This is Aya," the principal said. "She is new here. I hope everyone will make her feel welcome." A few students waved. Others smiled politely. Aya gave a small nod but said nothing. The principal left the room. Daniel walked toward her. "Welcome, Aya," he said kindly. "You can sit near the window." Aya nodded again. Still without speaking, she quietly moved to the empty desk and sat down. For the rest of the lesson, she remained silent. She listened carefully. She took notes. She never spoke to anyone when other students answered questions. She simply watched. Daniel found it unusual. Most new students at least introduced themselves. Aya seemed afraid to attract attention. During lunch, Daniel noticed something else. While other students gathered in groups, Aya sat alone. She ate quietly while reading a small book. Several students tried talking to her. She answered with only a few words, then returned to her book. By the end of the day, many students had already given up trying to start a conversation. But Daniel remained curious. There was something different about her. Not strange, just unusual. As classes ended, students left for home. Daniel stayed behind to finish grading assignments. The school slowly became empty. Outside, the sun began to set. The orange light filled the classroom. Suddenly, every computer screen in the room flickered. Daniel looked up. The lights blinked once, then twice. A strange buzzing sound came from the ceiling. For a moment, every electronic device stopped working. Then everything returned to normal. Daniel frowned. "That was odd," he muttered. A few seconds later, his phone restarted by itself. He stared at it in confusion. The device had worked perfectly all week. After checking that everything seemed normal, He returned to his work. He never noticed that the disturbance had started the exact moment Aya walked past the building outside. Across town, Aya quietly made her way home. She kept her head down as she walked. Her eyes constantly scanned the streets around her, almost as if she expected someone to be watching. When she finally reached a small apartment building, she relaxed slightly, but only slightly that night. While most of Earth slept peacefully, a deep space monitoring station far beyond the solar system detected something unusual. A technician stared at his screen, then sat upright. His eyes widened. "No," he whispered. His hands quickly moved across the controls. The signal appeared again. Weak, but unmistakable for 20 years. The signal had been missing for 20 years. Nobody had found its source. Now it had returned. The technician immediately sent an emergency report. Thousands of light years away, military computers activated. Warning alarms echoed through command centers. Officers rushed to their stations. A single message appeared across countless screens. Target detected, location confirmed, planet Earth. Daniel arrived at school early the next morning. The strange electrical failure from the previous day was still on his mind. He had checked with the maintenance staff before class. Nobody could explain what had happened. Every system had suddenly shut down for a few seconds. Then everything returned to normal. It made no sense. As he walked through the hallway, students slowly began arriving. The usual noise filled the building. Lockers opened and closed. Friends laughed together. Everything seemed normal. Then Daniel noticed Aya. She stood alone near a classroom window. Her eyes were fixed on the cloudy sky outside. She looked worried. Much more worried than yesterday, for a moment. Daniel considered speaking to her, but before he could, the first bell rang. Students hurried toward their classrooms. Aya quietly joined them. The day began. During the first lesson, Daniel noticed something strange. Aya kept looking toward the classroom door every few minutes, almost as if she expected someone to walk through it. She barely paid attention to the lesson. Her hands remained tightly clenched beneath the desk. Daniel had seen nervous students before, but this was different. This looked like fear, real fear. At lunch, Daniel sat in the teacher's lounge. He was drinking coffee when his computer suddenly made a notification sound. A new email had arrived. There was no sender name, no organization, no address, only a blank message with a single attachment. Daniel frowned. "Probably spam," he muttered. Still, curiosity got the better of him. He opened the file. The screen immediately turned black. Then a red symbol appeared, a symbol he had never seen before. Several lines of text followed. Daniel slowly read them. His coffee nearly slipped from his hand. Warning. The student known as Aya is extremely important. Do not let her leave your sight. Do not trust anyone asking about her. Delete this message after reading. Daniel stared at the screen. His heart began to beat faster. What kind of joke is this? He whispered. The message looked too professional to be a prank. Before he could think further, another file opened automatically. An image appeared. It was Aya, the exact same girl sitting in his classroom. Then more information appeared below. Daniel's eyes widened. A reward amount filled the screen. The number was so large he thought it had to be fake. 1 trillion credits. The figure continued for several lines. More money than he could even imagine. What? Daniel whispered. He leaned closer. The image remained unchanged. Aya's face looked back at him from the screen. A quiet 12-year-old student. Nothing about her suggested danger. Nothing about her explained such an impossible reward. Then the screen suddenly went black. The file deleted itself. Every trace vanished. Daniel sat frozen. His coffee had gone cold. For several minutes he simply stared at the monitor, trying to understand what he had just seen. A 1 trillion credit bounty on a child. It was impossible. Yet the message felt real. Very real. Across town, far from the school. Another visitor had arrived. He looked completely human. Dark hair, dark jacket, average height. Nobody gave him a second glance, which was exactly what he wanted. The man stepped out of a small hotel and looked toward the distant school building. A small device rested in his hand. Tiny lights flashed across its surface. Then one light turned green. The man smiled. "Found you," he said quietly meanwhile. Aya sat alone in the school library. A book rested open in front of her. But she was not reading. She could feel it. The feeling she had feared for years. Someone was searching. Someone was close. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the table. For a moment, she considered running. She had run many times before, planet after planet, city after city, never staying anywhere for long. But this place was different, for the first time in years. She did not want to leave for the first time. She had begun to feel safe. A voice suddenly interrupted her thoughts. "Aya." She looked up. Daniel stood nearby. Concern filled his face. "Are you okay?" he asked. Aya hesitated, then forced a small smile. "I'm fine," she said. It was a lie. Daniel could see it immediately. Before he could ask another question, the final bell rang. Students began leaving the building. The school day was over. Outside, rain clouds gathered above the town. The streets slowly emptied. Daniel watched students head home. Then he noticed someone standing across the street. A man in a dark jacket, completely still, watching the school. Something about him felt wrong, very wrong. The man suddenly looked directly toward Aya. Their eyes met, for the first time all day. Aya's face turned completely pale. Fear flooded her expression. Not nervousness, not worry, pure fear. Then she whispered two words, so quietly that Daniel almost missed them. "He found me." Daniel turned back toward the stranger. But the man was already crossing the street, walking straight toward the school entrance, and for the first time, Daniel realized that whatever secret Aya was hiding, it had finally caught up with her. Asterisk, asterisk. Rain fell over the town throughout the night. Dark clouds covered the sky. Thunder echoed in the distance. Most people slept peacefully, but Aya did not sleep. She sat beside her window and watched the empty street below. The man she had seen outside the school was gone. Yet she knew he had not left. People like him never gave up, not once they found her, not once they confirmed her location. For 20 years, they had followed her across the galaxy. For 20 years, she had stayed one step ahead. Now for the first time, she was not sure she could escape. Across town, inside a small hotel room, the stranger sat alone. Several glowing screens floated in front of him. One displayed Aya's picture. Another showed the school. A third contained a massive reward notice. The bounty amount covered nearly half the screen. The hunter smiled. He had spent years searching for clues, years chasing rumors, years following dead ends. Now the hunt was finally over. All he had to do was capture a child. It sounded easy, yet the hunter knew better. Many others had thought the same thing. None of them had returned. The next morning arrived. Students once again filled the school hallways. Laughter echoed through the building. Teachers prepared their lessons. Everything looked completely normal. But beneath the surface, something had changed. Aya felt it. The hunter felt it. And soon Daniel would feel it too. As students entered the classroom, Daniel noticed Aya immediately. She looked exhausted. Dark circles rested beneath her eyes. She had clearly not slept. "Aya, are you feeling okay?" Daniel asked. She nodded. "Yes." The answer came too quickly. Daniel did not believe it. Still, class began. Several students looked up. A few laughed, thinking it was a simple power problem. But Daniel noticed Aya. She had suddenly gone completely still. Her eyes focused on the classroom door. A second later, the lights flickered again. Then the school intercom briefly produced a burst of static. The sound lasted less than a second, yet Aya immediately stood from her chair. Fear filled her face. Every student turned toward her. "Aya?" Daniel asked. Before she could answer, the classroom door opened. A man stepped inside, the same man from outside the school. The dark jacket, the calm expression, the cold eyes. For a moment, nobody spoke. The man smiled politely. "Sorry to interrupt," he said. His voice sounded friendly, too friendly. "I'm looking for a student." Daniel stepped forward. "Can I help you?" he asked. The stranger's eyes moved across the room, then stopped on Aya. His smile widened slightly. "There you are." The entire color drained from Aya's face. Several students exchanged confused looks. Daniel immediately sensed something was wrong. "Do you know him?" he asked Aya. For a second, she said nothing. Then she slowly shook her head. "No." The stranger laughed softly. "Aya, we both know that's not true." The room became silent. The students no longer thought this was normal. Something felt dangerous. Something felt wrong. Daniel moved slightly closer to Aya. The stranger noticed. His smile disappeared. "You should step aside," he said. Daniel crossed his arms. "This is a school. If you need something, talk to the office." The man's eyes narrowed. For the first time his friendly mask cracked, and beneath it, the confidence of someone who was used to getting what he wanted. The hunter reached into his jacket. Several students gasped. Daniel immediately stepped forward, but instead of a weapon, the man removed a small silver device, no larger than a phone. The moment it activated, strange symbols appeared above it. The room lights began flickering violently. Computer screens turned on by themselves. Every electronic device in the classroom started malfunctioning. Students panicked. Several stood from their desks. "What is happening?" someone shouted. The hunter ignored them. His eyes remained fixed on Aya. "You've run long enough," he said. "Come with me." Aya's hands trembled. Daniel looked between them. Nothing about the situation made sense. Yet one thing was clear. Aya was terrified. And she was terrified of him. The hunter took another step forward. Then everything changed. The silver device suddenly emitted a loud warning sound. The glowing symbols became unstable. The hunter frowned. "What?" he muttered. The device began shaking in his hand. Cracks of blue light appeared across its surface. Then, without warning, it exploded. A burst of energy filled the room. The hunter was thrown backward. Students screamed. Desks overturned. Papers flew through the air. Daniel shielded several students as the shockwave passed. Then silence returned. Slowly, everyone looked up. The hunter lay motionless on the floor, his device completely destroyed. The room was unharmed. The students were unharmed. Even the windows remained intact. It made no sense. Absolute silence filled the classroom. Nobody understood what had happened. Nobody except Aya. She stared at the unconscious hunter. Fear still filled her eyes, but now another emotion appeared beside it, dread. Because she knew something everyone else did not. The hunter had not been working alone, and somewhere far beyond Earth, others were already on their way. Far more dangerous than the man lying on the classroom floor. And this time, nothing would stop them from coming. Asterisk, asterisk. The classroom remained silent after the explosion. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Students stared at the unconscious stranger lying on the floor. A few seconds earlier, everything had been normal. Now fear filled the room. Daniel was the first to react. "Everyone stay calm," he said. His voice was firm. "Move away from the man." The students quickly obeyed. Several looked ready to cry. Others were too shocked to speak. Daniel carefully approached the stranger. The man was still breathing, but he was completely unconscious. Beside him lay the shattered remains of the silver device. Something was very wrong. Very wrong. His eyes shifted toward Aya. She remained frozen beside her desk. Her face was pale. Her hands trembled. And for the first time since she arrived at the school, Daniel saw genuine despair in her eyes. Not fear, not nervousness, despair. As if she knew this was only the beginning. Minutes later, police officers arrived. The classroom was evacuated. Students were escorted outside. Questions filled the hallways. Rumors spread through the school faster than wildfire. Daniel remained near the entrance while officers examined the scene. The unconscious man had already been taken away, yet something strange happened. Every digital record connected to him vanished. No identity, no fingerprints, no official information. It was as if he did not exist. The discovery made the police even more confused. Meanwhile, Aya sat alone in a small office. She stared at the floor. Her thoughts raced. The hunter had failed. But failure always created a larger problem. Because hunters reported to others, and when reports suddenly stopped, questions followed. She knew exactly what would happen next. Its surface absorbed nearly all light, making it look like a moving shadow among the stars. Inside the command chamber, hundreds of officers monitored countless screens. A sudden alarm broke the silence. Red lights flashed across the room. One officer immediately stood. "We lost contact with Hunter 7, he announced. The room became quiet. At the center of the chamber sat a tall figure wearing dark armor. Nobody knew his real name. Most simply called him Commander Vos. The commander slowly looked up. "Location?" he asked. The officer checked his display. Then his eyes widened. "Earth." The commander became still. For several seconds nobody spoke. Then another screen activated. A familiar image appeared. Aya. The same image that had haunted the galaxy for 20 years. The command chamber suddenly felt colder. "Confirm the signal," Voss ordered. Technicians rushed to verify the data. A minute later, the answer arrived. 100% confirmed. The signal belonged to her. The commander slowly stood from his chair. His expression remained calm, but everyone in the room knew the meaning of his silence. 20 years of searching, 20 years of failure. Now the hunt was finally reaching its end. "Prepare the fleet," Voss said. The officers immediately obeyed. Across the giant vessel, warning sirens echoed through countless corridors. Engines began powering up. Weapon systems activated. Navigation computers calculated a new course. The rain had stopped. The streets were quiet. But his mind refused to rest. The stranger, the explosion, the impossible message, none of it made sense. Every answer seemed to create even more questions. And somehow, all those questions led back to one person. Aya. As he reached his car, he noticed someone sitting on a nearby bench. A small figure beneath a streetlight. Aya. She sat alone. Her backpack rested beside her. Daniel frowned. "Aya?" he asked. The girl slowly looked up. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Daniel sat beside her. "You should be home," he said. Aya looked toward the sky. Daniel asked. Aya hesitated, as if debating whether she should answer. Finally she spoke. The man today wasn't important. Daniel felt a chill run through him. "What?" Aya's eyes remained fixed on the stars above. He was only searching. Daniel stared at her. The seriousness in her voice frightened him. "Searching for what?" he asked. Aya remained silent for several seconds. Then she finally gave her answer. "Me." Daniel expected that response. But what came next shocked him. "There are others," Aya continued. "A lot of others. Much worse than him." The wind moved gently through the empty street. For the first time, Daniel realized how young she truly looked. Not like a criminal. Not like someone dangerous. Just a scared child carrying a burden too heavy for her shoulders. Before he could speak again, Aya suddenly looked upward. Her expression changed instantly. Fear appeared in her eyes. Real fear. Daniel followed her gaze. A tiny point of light crossing the night sky. Then another. And another. Within seconds, dozens of lights appeared above Earth, far beyond the atmosphere, far beyond ordinary sight. Yet Aya knew exactly what they were. The fleet had arrived, and somewhere among those distant lights was a force powerful enough to shake entire worlds. A force that had spent 20 years hunting one small child, and now it finally knew where she was. Asterisk, asterisk. Aya could not take her eyes off the moving lights in the sky. To Daniel, they looked like distant stars, small points of light crossing the darkness. But Aya knew the truth. Those were not stars. Those were ships, warships, and there were far more than she had expected. Her heart sank. For years she had hoped this day would never come. Yet deep inside, she had always known it would. The hunt had finally reached Earth. Daniel noticed the fear on her face. He looked back toward the sky, then at Aya. "What are they?" he asked. Aya remained silent. The question seemed simple, but the answer was not. How could she explain something that most humans could not even imagine? How could she explain why an entire galaxy feared a child? After several moments, she slowly stood from the bench. "We should leave," she said. Daniel frowned. "Leave? Why?" Aya looked directly into his eyes. For the first time since he had met her, she did not avoid eye contact. "They're here for me," she said quietly. The seriousness in her voice made Daniel uneasy. Before he could ask another question, a sudden vibration passed through the air. Both of them felt it, a low hum, almost like distant thunder. Except the sky was clear. The sound lasted only a few seconds, then disappeared, but it was enough. Aya knew what it meant. The fleet had entered the solar system, far above Earth, hidden beyond the range of human technology. Dozens of enormous ships emerged from faster-than-light travel. Dark metal giants appeared one after another. Their engines glowed like artificial suns. Thousands of smaller vessels surrounded them. The fleet stretched across space like a moving wall. Inside the command ship, Commander Vos studied a holographic image of Earth. The blue planet rotated slowly before him. One officer stepped forward. "Target remains on the surface," he reported. Vos nodded. No surprise there. She had nowhere else to go. Another officer hesitated before speaking. "There is one complication." Vos raised an eyebrow. "What complication?" The officer activated another display. A human school appeared, then images of students, teachers, and finally Daniel. The commander examined the information. "A human?" he asked. "Yes, Commander. He appears close to the target." Vos stared at Daniel's image for a few seconds, then dismissed it. "Remove him if necessary." The officer nodded to Vos. It was a simple solution. One insignificant human among billions, nothing more. Back on Earth, Aya and Daniel walked through a quiet street. The town seemed peaceful. Cars passed by. People continued their normal lives. Nobody knew a fleet was waiting beyond the sky. Nobody knew Earth had suddenly become the center of a galactic crisis. Daniel finally broke the silence. "Aya, who are you?" The question hung in the air. Aya slowed her steps. She had spent years hiding the truth, years running from it. But now there was no point anymore. The hunters had found her. Everything was changing. "They call me a threat," she said softly. Daniel listened carefully. "But I'm not." "Then why are they chasing you?" Aya looked away. "The galaxy believes I can destroy it." Daniel almost laughed, not because it was funny, because it sounded impossible. He looked at the small girl walking beside him. She barely looked old enough to be in middle school. Nothing about her seemed dangerous, yet Aya's expression remained serious. "I'm telling the truth," she said. Daniel noticed she had read his reaction perfectly. For several seconds neither spoke. Then Aya continued. "A long time ago, there was another civilization, older than every government that exists today, older than every empire." Daniel frowned. "How old?" Aya hesitated, then answered, "Older than recorded galactic history." The words sent a chill through him. Even Aya sounded uncomfortable saying them. "My people came from that civilization," she said. "We disappeared a long time ago." Daniel looked at her. "You mean your species?" Aya nodded. "The galaxy believes we're extinct." The street became quiet again. Daniel struggled to process everything. Ancient civilizations, galactic fleets, hunters. None of it felt real. Yet the fear in Aya's eyes was real. She did not answer. She was staring ahead. At the end of the street stood 3 figures, all wearing dark clothing, all completely still, waiting. The moment Aya saw them, her face turned pale, not because she recognized them, because she recognized what they represented. The fleet had already begun moving. The hunt was no longer happening from orbit. It had reached Earth. The 3 strangers slowly started walking toward them. Daniel instinctively stepped closer to Aya. His heart began racing. Something about the situation felt deeply wrong. The strangers moved with unnatural confidence, like people who feared nothing, like people who knew nobody could stop them. One of them raised a small device. A blue light flashed across its surface. Then a voice came from the device, cold, calm, and completely emotionless. "Target confirmed." The 3 figures stopped moving. The voice continued, "Capture the child." Aya closed her eyes for a moment. The words felt familiar, too familiar. She had heard them on dozens of worlds, across countless years. Always the same command, always the same hunt. When she opened her eyes again, something had changed. The fear remained. But another emotion appeared beside it, determination. Because running was becoming impossible, and for the first time in 20 years, the people hunting her had followed her to a place she did not want to abandon, a place she wanted to protect, a place called Earth. And as the 3 hunters advanced through the darkness, the 3 hunters moved closer through the empty street. Their footsteps were slow, calm, confident. They were not worried. They did not expect resistance. Why would they? On hundreds of worlds, people had surrendered the moment they arrived. Entire governments had obeyed their orders. Entire armies had stepped aside. To them, Earth was no different. Just another planet standing between them and their target. But they were wrong. Daniel stepped in front of Aya. His heart pounded inside his chest. He had no weapon, no special training, no idea who these people really were. But one thing was clear. Aya was terrified of them. His cold eyes settled on Daniel. "Move," he said. His voice carried no emotion. Daniel crossed his arms. "No." The hunter seemed surprised. Not angry, just surprised. As if nobody had ever given him that answer before. "This matter does not concern you," the hunter said. Daniel shook his head. "She's my student." The hunter stared at him for a moment, then looked toward Aya. "Your protection changes nothing," he said. "You cannot stop what is coming." A strange silence followed. The wind moved through the street. Clouds drifted across the moon. Then Aya suddenly stepped forward. Daniel looked at her. "Aya, it's okay," she said quietly. But her voice sounded different. Not frightened, not weak. Something had changed. The hunters noticed it too. For the first time, uncertainty appeared in their eyes. Aya looked directly at them. "Why did they send you?" she asked. The tallest hunter answered immediately. "Because the commander wants you alive." Aya lowered her gaze. A sad smile appeared on her face. "Alive," she whispered. "They always say that." The hunters remained silent. Then Aya looked back up, and something unexpected happened. The streetlights around them flickered. Every light on the road blinked at the same time. Cars parked nearby suddenly activated their alarms. Windows vibrated. Phones inside nearby houses restarted on their own. Daniel looked around in confusion. The hunters looked alarmed, very alarmed. One of them immediately grabbed a communication device. "We found her," he said urgently. "Something is happening." Far above Earth, inside Commander Voss's flagship, warning signals erupted across the command deck. Technicians rushed between consoles. Red lights flashed everywhere. An officer stood suddenly. "Commander." Voss turned toward him. "What is it?" The officer looked terrified, a reaction Voss rarely saw. "We're detecting energy activity." The commander frowned. "From the child?" "Yes." The officer swallowed hard. "But the readings are impossible." Voss walked toward the display. Numbers filled the screen. Commander Voss felt uneasy, because he had seen those numbers before. Long ago, very long ago, in ancient classified records. Records most people believed were myths. The same civilization that had left behind technologies nobody could understand. And now those ancient energy patterns were appearing again. On Earth, because of one child. Back in the street, the air itself seemed different. Daniel felt pressure building around them. Almost like the atmosphere was becoming heavier. The hunters took a step back. For the first time they looked afraid. Aya noticed it. "They never told you the truth, did they?" she asked. The tallest hunter tightened his grip on his weapon. "What truth?" Aya looked toward the sky, toward the stars hidden behind the clouds. Then she spoke words she had never spoken aloud before. "My people didn't disappear." The hunters froze. Daniel stared at her. Aya continued. "They were destroyed." The street became silent. Even the hunters listened. "Thousands of years ago," she said. "The galaxy united against them." Daniel's eyes widened. "The entire galaxy?" he asked. Aya nodded slowly. "They were afraid. Afraid of what we knew. Afraid of what we could build. Afraid of what we could become. The hunters exchanged nervous looks, because this was not the story they had been taught. This was not the story anyone had been taught. Aya lowered her head. When the war ended, everyone agreed to erase us from history. Every record, every world, every memory. Daniel could hardly believe what he was hearing. An entire civilization erased, not forgotten, erased. The tallest hunter suddenly raised his weapon. "Enough," he said. His voice sounded less confident now. "We're taking you with us." Aya looked at him, then slowly shook her head. "No." The hunter pulled the trigger. A bright blue beam shot forward. Daniel's heart nearly stopped, but the beam never reached her. It froze in midair, completely motionless, as if time itself had stopped around it. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The hunters stared in shock. Daniel could barely understand what he was seeing. The frozen energy beam hovered inches from Aya, then quietly disappeared. Gone. Without a sound, without an explosion, without a trace. The hunters stepped backward. Fear filled their faces, because they finally understood something terrifying. The stories were true. The legends were true. Commander Voss looked at the growing energy readings and felt a chill run through him, because he realized the hunt had never been about stopping Aya. It had always been about preventing something much worse, something that was beginning to wake up, something hidden inside her. And somewhere deep beneath the surface of Earth, an ancient machine that had slept for thousands of years suddenly activated, its systems coming online one by one, responding to a signal only it could recognize, responding to Aya ***. Far beneath Earth's surface, hidden deeper than any human mine or research facility had ever reached, something ancient opened its eyes. For thousands of years, it had slept in complete darkness, waiting, watching, listening. Entire civilizations had risen and fallen while it remained silent. Empires had been born. Wars had been fought. History had marched forward, yet the machine never moved, until now. A single signal had reached it. A signal it had been programmed to obey. Aya, deep underground, enormous systems began activating. Ancient power flowed through forgotten networks. Lights illuminated chambers that had not seen brightness for ages. Massive doors unlocked one by one. Machines older than recorded galactic history slowly came back to life, and nobody on Earth knew it was happening, not yet. Above ground, the empty street remained frozen in tension. The three hunters stared at Aya. None of them dared move. As though reality itself had erased it, Daniel stood beside Aya. His mind struggled to understand everything he had witnessed. Every answer seemed to create 10 new questions. Ancient civilizations, galactic fleets, impossible technology, and now this. The tallest hunter slowly lowered his weapon. Fear had replaced confidence. For years he had heard stories about Aya's people. Stories used to frighten young recruits, stories dismissed as myths by many officers. But standing here now, he realized those stories had been true all along. The hunter activated his communicator. His voice trembled slightly. "Commander, we have a situation, far above Earth, aboard the flagship." The energy readings were rising faster every minute. Ancient systems were activating all across the planet, some beneath oceans, others beneath mountains, others hidden deep below major cities. Every signal traced back to the same source. Aya, an officer, turned toward Voss, his face pale. "Commander, the sleeping network is waking up." The room became silent. Nobody wanted to hear those words. Not after centuries of fear, not after thousands of years of warnings. Voss clenched his fists. "How many sites have activated?" The officer checked the display, then looked up nervously. "Over 300 so far." A chill spread through the command center. 300, and the number was still increasing. Back on Earth, Aya suddenly staggered. Daniel immediately caught her before she fell. "Aya!" She grabbed her head. Pain filled her expression. Images flooded her mind, millions of images. Ancient cities stretching across entire planets. Towering structures touching the clouds. Ships larger than moons. Crowds of people she had never met, yet somehow remembered. Memories buried deep inside her for years. Memories that were never supposed to return. Daniel helped her sit down. "What is happening?" he asked. Aya struggled to answer. They're waking up. The words barely escaped her lips. Daniel frowned. Who's waking up? Aya looked toward the ground beneath her feet. Her eyes widened. Not from fear, from realization. Then she whispered something that made even the hunters nervous. The guardians. The street became silent. One hunter immediately stepped back. Another cursed under his breath. They all knew that word. Every military academy in the galaxy taught the legend. The Guardians, ancient machines created by the first civilization. Machines so powerful that entire fleets had once feared them. Machines believed destroyed thousands of years ago. Machines that apparently had been sleeping beneath Earth all this time. A sudden vibration shook the ground. Windows rattled. Car alarms began sounding again. The hunters looked around nervously. Daniel nearly lost his balance. Then another vibration followed, stronger than the first. Several nearby buildings trembled. People emerged from their homes, confused and frightened. Earthquake warnings began appearing on phones across the town. But this was not an earthquake. Something else was moving. Far beneath the planet's surface, something enormous, hundreds of kilometers away. Inside a remote mountain range, the ground split apart, rocks shattered, dust filled the sky. And from the darkness below, a massive metal structure slowly emerged. Then another emerged beneath an ocean, and another beneath a desert. Like giants returning from a long sleep. Inside the flagship, panic spread across the command deck. Officers shouted reports. Warning alarms echoed through every corridor. Commander Voss stared at the incoming data. His face had become completely expressionless, because he finally understood the truth. The galaxy had been afraid of Aya for the wrong reason. They believed she was a weapon. They believed she possessed some hidden power capable of destroying worlds. But that was never the real danger. Aya was not the weapon. She was the key. The one person capable of waking an ancient civilization's final defense system. Back on Earth, Aya slowly stood. The pain in her head was fading. The memories were becoming clearer. For the first time in years, she remembered who she truly was. Something far more important, as another powerful vibration shook the planet. And for the first time since the hunt began 20 years ago, the hunters were no longer chasing her, because now they were afraid of what had awakened with her. ***.